The last part, risk management processes. So what do we do to implement a proper risk management within our trading company? We start to describe this process from an initialization period. So we assume here that nothing has been done regarding risk management in that particular company. It may happen that from wherever you're watching this, in your country, trading is new. So you have a liberalized market, people started trading, and typically risk management follows trading. It may also be that you are a newly founded company in any market, Germany, anywhere else. You start doing business, and when you do business, you want to earn money. That's your number one priority. Of course, you want to watch the risks, but you don't start by watching risks. You start by wanting to make money. And then at some point you realize, well, we have to be careful regarding risks. And then you initialize a risk management procedure. So very first steps, you look at the organizational structure, what's already in place. For example, you look at the organization chart. Organigramm, this is called in Germany. This specifies who in the company is broadly doing what. We will have an example for that in a minute. It shows the different functions within the company, and then you get a first impression of who's doing what and who is thus responsible or should be made responsible for what. Then you should look at the people involved in the risky areas. So procurement, sales, controlling, billing, finance, all these areas which are related to our open position in the end. Then you check the rights and obligations of those involved in the context of procurement and sales. Determination and allocation of the risk capital is the last thing you check. How is this done and allocated? Then you look at processes, existing organizational guidelines, what is already in place, who can do what, who has to inform whom, and so on. Rights, who can, again, is allowed to do what, obligations, who needs to pass which information, and so on. And then you check the systems in place, procurement, sales, trading systems, existing challenges, and changes in the future. So the status quo is the starting point. However, initialization goes on. You check the procurement situation. What is the framework of contracts? For example, is the EFET format in place we already discussed? European Federation of Energy Traders. Are they using their guidelines, or do they have something individual? So when, for example, are deals paid for? 20th, you remember credit risk of the month after delivery, or is anything else specified? What individual contracts have already been signed? How is the contractual situation in this company? How much have they bought, sold? What's the open position? Stuff like that. What are the counterparties? Can anybody be counterparty or just certain companies? And then we have baseload or flexible contracts. What has been traded? Is there some flexibility? What are the open contracts? What are the storage capacities? And so on and so on. Then that's the procurement. Last but not least, you check the sales situation. Household customers, large customers. Do we have any interruptible companies or clients where we can, at least for a certain period of time, interrupt? Or do we not have such customers? Do we have any particularly risky counterparties? Do we sell energy mostly in our own metropolitan region, so in our proximity, or in a municipality in our established sales areas? Or are we competing with other municipalities in other areas where we don't really have a historically strong setup? Do we own the grid, or are we delivering through external grids? What are the historical load profiles for our consumers? And then, do we manage separate portfolios, or is it just one portfolio? So all in all, this initialization is to come to terms with what is in place right now. And once you understand the current situation, you can then implement a proper risk management. Here is an example for an organigram, or an organization chart. So you see here the company, and we have here trading on the left, sales on the right, and central functions which are used by both in the middle. We have on the trading side different departments, for example electricity trading and gas trading, and then just as examples within electricity trading we have a front office, we have a portfolio management, we have an electricity supply, we have an analysis department. So this may then well all be different departments. For example, during my time doing this, I was heading this portfolio management department down there. For gas trading, you may have a similar structure or a slightly different structure depending on where the focus in your company is. Then we have the central functions, the middle office, which is doing modeling and valuation, very important for your business. Risk analysis and risk controlling, also very important. Typically, the risk management is not done by the traders, by the front office, because then they would be controlling themselves. So you have someone more neutral, for example, a different section of the company, the mid office, which is responsible for controlling the electricity trading. Then you have IT management as another central function, legal department, HR, marketing, and so on. And then you may have commercial departments, back office it was called, and you have the sales department, the department who is actually actively engaging final customers to buy electricity, to buy natural gas, to buy your products. So this is one example, and then every employee is in any one of these boxes, for example, head of sales, or a sales manager in the sales on the right, and for example, one of my team members in portfolio management on the left. Okay, this of course already helps you to structure responsibilities. Someone in gas trading is obviously responsible for gas trading. That person is not responsible for IT management. That person is not responsible for electricity trading. Okay, so that was one, to get the organizational structure updated, maybe even optimized. Second very important step, we have touched upon this, is the determination of risk capital. Virtually every business activity involves risks. However, the risks taken should not threaten the continued existence of the company. So yes, we do take risks. Yes, we have to take risks. There would not be economic activity without any risks. Any business has the risk of going out of business. But we should watch those risks. So in energy trading, risks can be substantial. Price risk, volume risk, credit risk, all can be substantial. And the risks which are taken should not threaten the continuous functioning, the bare existence of the company. That is, in a way, completely evident. The risk capital must therefore suffice to ensure the continued existence of the company, even in the worst case. That's the minimum requirement. We do not want to endanger our company. Total risk capital must then be subdivided, taking into account correlations among the various business areas or activities, for example, according to strategic importance or expected returns on risk capital. So that is an important thing to say. Risk capital is valuable. We just have a certain amount of it. That's in a way what the company could afford to lose. And this is a euro amount which is not unlimited. So this is scarce. However, the problem now is if we do proper risk management, which we should do, everybody having risks has to show they hold the risk capital for the eventuality of losses. So that means anybody in the company who wants to pursue any economic activity has to apply for, has to lobby for risk capital. Especially, for example, the electricity trader wants risk capital, and the more risk capital they have, the more open positions they can have in their books, the more money they can potentially earn, and the more bonus they can earn for themselves. The gas traders, of course, have exactly the same rationale. They need risk capital because gas trading is a risk-related business. The more risk capital they get, the more open positions they can handle, and the more revenue they can potentially earn, and the more bonus they can potentially earn. So they are directly competing for risk capital. And here we are saying, look, it now has to be subdivided to different activities. And then you can say strategically, well, we want to focus on electricity trading, or we want to focus on gas trading, if you have such a focus. Or you can say, I want to focus on the proximity of my municipality and do not branch out to any other cities or regions. Then you strategically allocate risk capital to businesses which are more close by. Or you can say, well, our strategic focus depends on the expected return on risk capital. Our strategic focus is to maximize our revenues. We do not really care where our business generates that money. We don't care if it's gas trading or electricity trading, or whether it's selling to a customer which lives 10 kilometers from us, or to a customer which lives 100 or 1,000 kilometers from us. As long as the deal is good, let's do it. So here you calculate how much risk capital you would need for a deal, and then you allocate your risk capital where the expected return is maximal. Here's an exemplary risk capital allocation. You start from the top, the risk capital, and then assign some to credit risk, some to price risk, and some to other risks. And then you, with the credit risk capital, you do what we already discussed, discussing credit risk, credit limit per credit rating. For the price risk capital, you have loss limits for electricity, loss limits for gas trading, and that's about it. Okay, so that's how to allocate risk capital. Then we have the risk, and that is, of course, what you in the end then supervise whether this risk capital is exceeded, right? That's where we get to the different positions we can then monitor in a daily business. And that is in part then done in the next steps. First, the framework for these next steps is the so-called risk manual. That's a brochure or book, or however you want to call it, several pages which allocate responsibilities. Who is allowed to do what? For example, which products are allowed to be traded in the company? For example, traders sitting in Germany, are they allowed to buy and sell futures in France or not? Are they allowed to buy and sell futures in Poland? Are they allowed to buy and sell hard coal? Or do they focus on electricity and gas? So which products and markets can which trader trade? That's another thing. Who then can do what? Typically, you have different desks, a weather desk, coal desk, CO2 desk, and these people working at that specific desks then trade the specific commodity. And this all is specified in the risk manual. Okay, the organization and risk manuals are the core components of risk management concepts. In a risk manual, for example, the relevant risks analyzed and guidelines for management and monitoring are established. Changes in the environment, however, necessitate adjustments. So you have to look at this from time to time. The tasks, the risk manuals also specifies the risks involved and their description. The allocation of tasks and responsibilities. The representation of processes and interfaces. The description of mandates, limits, methods, products and markets. The procedure in exceptional situations. What should be done if, for example, we can't reach the managing director? Like the managing director is responsible for certain decisions. If, for example, the lights become yellow, the managing director can then be contacted, and then we have some escalation step where we discuss whether we really want to close the position or whether we decide to keep it. But what happens if the managing director is ill or something? It could be specified. Also, of course, how to get there, what qualifies as a yellow light needs to be described. Okay, and then the description of a portfolio structure. That's all in the risk manuals. Then next step is risk reporting. That is done on a daily basis at least. Reporting is a central component of risk management. An essential task is, for example, to show the expected loss of a portfolio which occurs with a certain probability or in the worst case, and to serve the management or a risk committee as a basis for a decision. So this, for example, here is where you daily compute the value at risk, the realized profit, the current value of non-realized position, and so on and so on and so on. And you provide this information so that it is easily or very easy to grasp, to see. So in a nice visual presentation. Okay, then you have the tools and methods and their role in risk management and controlling. Starting on the upper left, we start with the risk capital, which is allocated. Then we have a limit system. How much limit do we have where? Then we have product and portfolio valuation. So we calculate, are we still doing good with the risks? And if something has to be fed back to the limit system, we do that. And then we provide a risk report. Meaningful indicators for risk measurement we have already discussed. The stress, the value at risk, the profit at risk. So that's why we introduced these. They are all, to one extent or another, used to steer the risk management process in real-world companies. Okay, and then once, for example, a year is done, you do back testing, checking what was good and what was not so good. You may have an additional committee, the so-called risk committee. The risk committee is an instrument of risk management that is intended to ensure the implementation of the procurement strategy and risk policy in the areas of generation, portfolio management, and sales, including financial and corporate planning. So this risk committee may, for example, meet every quarter, roughly every 3 months. The participants are rather high-level executive board managers and some external experts. And the tasks can be approval of the risk manual, review, outlook of risk indicators, suitability of risk management system, adoption of risk management system, approval of new markets, products, trading partners, and trading contracts, and the approval of current limits. So this is a committee high level which meets maybe every quarter, typically in reality, at least for moderately sized companies, somewhat less often, but for large companies it makes sense to do it this often. Okay, then let's sum up with the tasks of risk management and a possible frequency they are performed. First task, monitoring of compliance with price risk limits and related reporting, including recommendations for corrective measures. That should be done at least weekly, depending on the risk attitude or the type and size of the possible open position. Most often, if we are really discussing trading companies, daily or even several times per day. Credit rating of business partners at least once a year. Monitoring of compliance with credit limits and related reporting, including recommendations for corrective measures, weekly. Conducting and participating in risk committee meetings once per quarter. Monitoring, maintenance, quality assurance, and further development of the risk management system should be done continuously. Worst case assessments and determination of risk capital requirements for generation, transport, and storage risk should be done once per quarter. Approval of markets and products should be done when it arises. Regular product liquidity checks should be done once per quarter. Risk audits for compliance with risk guidelines, functionality of systems should be done once per year. And backtesting of the methods used and revisions of guidelines should also be done once per year. And with that, we conclude this whole class. I have talked about energy management. We have started with energy trading for different portfolios. We have started with simple portfolios. Then we have said, look, what happens if you have generation and wholesale markets? If you have wholesale markets and final consumers, what happens if you have an integrated company? How can we earn money? What are the functions within all these different areas? And then in the later videos, we have discussed risks and risk management, which always should accompany energy trading. And as I said before, this can be used in all liberalized markets. It can be used in Europe. It can also be used in other continents once markets for energy are at least somewhat liberalized. And of course, it can be used, the general things we said, for electricity, for gas, but probably even for crude oil, natural gas, and probably some other commodities as well. I would like to conclude and thank you all for watching. Thanks a lot.